Okay, good morning. Magandang umaga. Magandang umaga. Hi, I'm Lalo Claudio. I'm a historian based in the US, but I'm Filipino. And today we're going to open this proscenium. And our topic is our national literature, Filipino spirit and imagination. But before we begin, I just wanted to announce that there are interpreting devices available for English and German, if I'm not mistaken. So today, we are going to be talking to two award-winning poets and translators across time and space, converse about the state of Philippine national literature, huge topic, from the perspective of the periphery. And we are going to begin with Merlie Alunan, who lives a full creative life. Retired as a professor emeritus in 2008 from the University of the Philippines, she has published 7 poetry collections in English, one in Cebuano, and her latest, a translation to English of Esther Tapia's Cebuano poetry. Having studied Waray oral narratives, she has since pushed for writing and reading in the Visayan mother tongues. And then our second speaker is Kristian Cordero, poet, fictionist, essayist, translator, and independent filmmaker, has poetry collections in Filipino, Bicol, and Rinconada. Known for his visionary leadership, he set up Savage Mind, arts, books, cinema, which has since become a vibrant cultural hub for Naga City, since it also opened a gallery and coffee shop in the same space. I'd love to go there. Rooted in Bicol history and culture, his books have gone beyond showing the Bicol language can carry European stories. So I think we will begin. The first is Merlie, and then we will move on to Kristian.
First of all, I'd like to object to the word periphery because I don't think we like to think of ourselves as the periphery. We think of ourselves as part of the whole in which there is no center nor edge, but we're all together. That's how I would like to think of the Philippines, the Filipino people, Philippine culture, Philippine literature. All the literatures are part of the whole. I would like to think of the wholeness and not of the center and periphery element. Nevertheless, we have to admit that such a thing does exist in the Philippines, and that's a thing that we must all struggle against. Um, I'd like to start by giving us a view of the archipelago as it looks, no? From the air and from some distance. Uh, Whether we like it or not, there is really such a thing, such a divide as the North and the South. And the North is very important because of the center, which is Manila, where all things begin, or all things seem to begin. Um, I don't know what Kristian would have to say to that, but in a way, I think we share the sentiment because years ago, how many years ago? Maybe 15 or 20 years ago, we were together in Naga and we were talking about creating as a mode of resistance the Southern Literary Corridor. That would consist, he said, include Bicol, from Bicol all the way to Palawan in the west, and Samar and Leyte in the east, all the way to Mindanao, Tawi-Tawi, the last islands of the Philippines in the south, in the deepest south. I would like to concentrate my exploration on the south, which we call as Dihabagatan. So we will talk about that. This is what I will discuss with you first. This is the north, and Manila is somewhere here, no? This is the Bicol area. These are the Visayan Islands, and this is Mindanao, all the way to this little island here, the Tawi-Tawi group of islands. This is called the Habagatan. From this point down, and of course, the top is the north, which I hope Kristian will talk about a little bit. Will deal with a little bit because I did not really tackle it in my exploration. Let me read a little bit from my paper, so it will not go. We will not go helter skelter. The common word we use for wind from the southwest is habagat. When the habagat wind blows, it brings rain and rough weather. And because, as you can see, the seas are all around the southern parts of the Philippines, life is very much affected by the wind. Then when the habagat comes, the fisherman does not go out to fish. He stays home. Maybe he starves, his family starves a little bit because he cannot earn a living. The Visayas and Mindanao are in the southern parts of the chain of islands which comprise the Philippine archipelago. This is called, as I said already, the Habagatan. The part of the archipelago south of Luzon, which is the biggest island, and Manila, the national center of our little country. Habagatan, or the south, consists of two large areas, the Visayas and Mindanao. And of course, Bicol. But we have to think a little bit more to put that together and do a little more work to really put these islands, put these spaces or areas together. The Visayas, or the Kabisayan, as we call ourselves, in the native language, consist of the islands lying between Luzon, the biggest island, and the second biggest island being Mindanao. So it's an in-between space between two large islands. The Visayas is now politically divided into three regions. The Eastern Visayas, which consist of Samar and Leyte. Samar is, by the way, the third supposed to be largest island in the country, and very rich, but also considered one of the poorest of the islands. And then Samar, Leyte, and Biliran are referred to as the eastern region, no? The Eastern Visayas. Now, in the central part is Cebu, Bohol, and Siquijor. That's the central Visayas. Where are they in the map? I suppose if the audience is Filipino, they know more or less how this is. This is the Eastern Visayas. This is Samar. This is Leyte. This is the Central Visayas, which consists of Bohol, Cebu, where we had recently this big earthquake that destroyed the northern part, this part here, and half of Negros Island. Then this is Panay, and this is the other half of Negros. This is the Western Visayas. Palawan is not included, but in the Visayas. But if you have gone to Palawan, you will notice that the language of Palawan is very, very similar to the languages in the Panay area. Okay, since we are looking at the map now, let's consider the language. Samar and part of Leyte speaks Waray. Samar, Leyte speaks Waray. That part of Leyte, which faces Cebu, speaks Cebuano. Now, all of these in yellow, these are Cebuano-speaking areas. Central Visayas has only one language, that's Cebuano. But they have a number of dialects, all derived from the Cebuano language. And then Negros, Oriental, the part that faces Panay uses Hiligaynon. Panay has 3 provinces. Each province speaks a particular language. This area here, known as Antique, speaks Kinaraya. The area on this part, the northern part, speaks Kinaraya and Hiligaynon. Iloilo, which is the lower part, the southern part of the island of Panay, speaks Kinaraya and Hiligaynon. And there is another province, the province of Aklan, which speaks its own language known as Akyanon or Aklanon. They have a peculiar way of saying the letter L. So it's that instead of saying Aklanon, you say Akyanon, like a Y, which is not really a Y. This little island here is Guimaras. Now, Guimaras speaks mainly Kinaraya and also Hiligaynon. So you see in the Visayas alone, you see many different languages. And all of these languages have literatures. So there is literature of the Karaya, which are mostly in the oral form yet, until the coming of a certain teacher, Leo Derriada, who began encouraging people to write in their own languages. So by that gesture, by that act, Leo Derriada initiated the development of print literature in the languages of Panay, in Akyanon, in Kinaraya, because Hiligaynon has a long publishing history that dates back even before the war. The first printing shop in Iloilo was established by a Bicolano, whose name I cannot remember. Mariano Perfecto, yes. So he comes from Bicol. And his print shop is still alive up to now. There are certain islands that should rightfully be considered Bisaya, but somehow they are not part of the political divisions right now. Islands of Mindoro and Masbate, I think those islands should properly be Visayan. The group of islands called Romblon. Romblon has a language almost like that takes after the languages of Panay. So combinations of Hiligaynon, Aklanon, and their own language. They call it Asi. My point really is that this rich ethno-linguistic resources of the Philippines have been sidelined by history and by our particular choices at a certain time of our history. We chose to disregard the minor languages, or what they consider the minor languages. We chose to minoritize them rather than give them equal space in the development of the country. But as I discovered because I was moving around these islands over almost my entire life. I've lived in Cebu, I've lived in Bohol, I've lived in Negros. I have picked up all the languages of the Visayas, and I have discovered that each of these languages have their own body of oral literature, which we have practically ignored, and in fact, not only ignored, but looked down upon. And we are now just beginning to appreciate them and make them, uh, put them into printed form so that they can be shared throughout the entire nation. Now, what about Mindanao? Mindanao is even more complex than one can imagine. Mindanao is peopled by indigenous or native tribes known as the Lumad and Muslims, both with strong and deeply entrenched cultures and identities. Some of these tribes are slowly dying out as they integrate into the mainstream culture. These tribes in Mindanao resisted Spanish and American colonization. Thus, Mindanao was viewed as a problematic spot by colonial authorities because it was impossible to make them, you know, to make them integrate. They had their own culture, they had their own government, they had their own system within their clans and tribes. And so this kept them together and prevented them from becoming so easily part of the whole. During the Commonwealth period, Mindanao was opened to settlers from other parts of the country. In fact, my family, the Alunan family, was one of those families, some branches, some parts of some siblings, some parts of the family, when they lost their wealth in Negros, some of them went to Mindanao and bought and took up uh, they took up lands which were offered by the government for free. Homesteads, they were called. I remember my father telling me that they could get as much as 25 hectares of homestead property. But if you can think about it, these were actually ancestral lands owned by maybe Lumad or the tribes, the Muslim tribes. And this is one of the causes of the continuous trouble that persists even up to now in Mindanao. Now, who are the Lumads? These are said to be, there are said to be about 18 or more Lumad tribes in Mindanao. The word Lumad means native or indigenous. In Waray, we call them Tuminungnung. I don't know what they are called in Bicol. Uh, the Ilonggos would say tal, means that's a Spanish word. I think they were borrowing it. It means from the place itself. They came from the place itself. They are not settlers. They didn't come from anywhere. They are really the natives. Each of these tribes have languages of their own. And they have customs of their own. They have their own way of cuisine, for example, and systems of ownership and systems of marriage, family relations. They have laws of their own. They have a sense of justice. They have a justice system of their own. And I think they functioned very well within that, within their own tribal ways. They had their own belief systems, their own religions, and we are gradually beginning to realize that they also have literatures of their own, no? Like the Manobo, like we were talking about the Mansaka yesterday, and the Tibuli. But there has not been too much study of these tribes, and lucky are those who have whose cultures have been discovered and written down by scholars. I am familiar with the Aromanon Manobo. the epic of the Arumanon Manobo, the Ulahingan, because I have been able to, I worked with a researcher and helped in the translation of some of the Manobo epics. They have their own customs and traditions. There was probably intermarriages also, but the tribes contained themselves. The most amazing thing about the languages that I'm talking about, the languages of the tribes, as well as even the Visayan languages, is there is a lot of traffic among the peoples. Like there is a lot of traffic between Waray and Cebuano, and yet over hundreds of years, dating from the time of Magellan, even earlier than the time of Magellan, the traffic among these languages have been going on. But the languages remain as themselves. There's some borrowing of lexis from here and there, but the languages remain individual and unique. And they do not influence or kill each other. In other words, we have been able to live together in this kind of polylingual complexity and survived in peace. Well, maybe there were occasional wars and conflicts, but what I'd like to stress is that these languages are venerable, they're sacred, they're ancient, they are sacred to our race. And the fact that up to now, despite the internet, despite English, despite even Filipino, the national language, these languages manages to persist. These languages are therefore very, very important. They are very, very much part of every Filipino's identity. In the Philippines, we are not identified by the places where we come from. We are identified by the language that we speak. Now, is it possible for a Filipino to learn several languages? As a matter of fact, yes. In Panay, for example, where there are at least 3 major languages, Kinaraya, Hiligaynon, and Akyanon, the people, they interact a great deal, but each speaks his own language. I think they understand one another, whatever language they speak, and they don't even say, oh, why are you talking like that to me? They don't say that. They accept it. And they answer probably in a conversation in their own language. If you speak to me in Akyanon and I speak Hiligaynon, I will answer you in my own language, in Hiligaynon, and you will have to accept it. And there's no problem. There's no problem at all. There's a little town in Leyte. It's called Kapuokan. And 9 kilometers after that, Kapuokan is Waray speaking. 10 kilometers after that is the town of Cananga, another small town. Cananga is Cebuano speaking. There's a highway that traverses both towns, and every day, hundreds of people pass in this highway, interact with each other, and yet Kapuokan remains forever Waray, and Cananga remains forever Cebuano. And they don't quarrel. They understand each other. And I think that's the kind of thing that we should cultivate among us Filipinos, not just to love one language, but to love all our languages so that we can listen to one another and talk to one another with love and understanding. And that is the role of literature. That's where I end myself.
Thank you very much. That was actually perfectly timed because I was just getting signs from our organizers that there were 5 minutes left, and she ended with 2 minutes to spare. So it's perfect.
Wow.
Yeah, without even having to look at the timer. So that's brilliant. The pressure on you, Kristian, to end on time, exactly on time as well. So we'll hand over the mic to Kristian.
Thank you, Leloy. I'd like to think that Dr. Alunan's presentation is a kind of a mirror that looks into the microcosm of what we are calling as Philippine literature in the context of the South, of the region, of the periphery. As a very young nation founded on the Republican ideals of the late 19th century, the Philippines remains a struggling and imagining people. For better or for worse, the nation remains an elusive project, colonized, conquered, invaded, or discovered. The idea of the nation is present, but it is always evading us. It is in this context that I would like to draw some points of thoughts about the topic. And like Dr. Alunan, I'd like to see this presentation as a little window upon which you can use it in looking to that world where I continue to forge my imaginative alliance, Bicol. We are now in the time when we are reaping the fruits of the many hard labors of our local scholars and cultural workers. Writing in the language in one's region seems to be an acceptable thing to do, and one can just easily be recognized by all these efforts to preserve and do cultural work in one's region. In other words, it has become a regular currency of a modest value. Regional cultural studies centers are set up in Cebu, Baguio, Iloilo, Davao, Cagayan de Oro, Zamboanga, and they continue to do programs that promote these local identities and languages. The publishing landscape has dramatically changed because we now have university presses outside Manila, although smaller, but are actively publishing works in and on local languages. University presses in Manila have also published significant literary works from the regions, and I must say that we are creating new ecologies and networks among publishers, writers, and other creatives. After the people power in 1986 up to the beginning of the new millennium, we saw a significant shift in the way people regard their local literatures. The government, the academe, the institutional church, cultural and artist groups, to mention a few, have contributed to this kind of movement. Local literature is now being taught and appreciated within the academic setting, and although there are still so many things to be done, we are grateful to the pioneering works, this native clearing, so to speak, laid out by a previous generation of scholars and artists who have planted that seed that now bears this fruit. And I remember them today. Dr. Maria Lilia Rialubit, Carlos Ojeda Orius, Marni Kilatis, Rafael Jun Belgica, Carlos Arejola, to mention a few who have gone from this world but have left us, at least in Bicol, in my region, a very strong sense of honor in writing in one's language of birth and imagination. Other writers like Luis Cabalquinto, Godet Calleja, Frank Peñones Jr., and I will add Danton Rimoto here, continue to inspire us with their literary works. As a restless spirit myself, and inspired by the works of these people I mentioned, here is what I think the big lesson that I have learned in recent years when we established this independent bookshop and art space in Naga City. It's called Savage Mind. In 2018, we put up a bookshop. Savage Mind provided us a kind of space that celebrates the multitude of ourselves, be it in language or in thoughts, in our common aspirations and divergences. The bookshop gave us the opportunity to see that in imagining literature, we must not only see it as a work of a writer or that of a cultural worker, but rather we must pay attention to our readers, to our listeners. For after all, literature survives not because people are writing solely in that language, but because there are people who are willing to listen in that language. So, what is this Filipino spirit that I am talking about? I think we have to cultivate this Filipino spirit in more third spaces, in this kind of space that provides sanctuary to our letters, a dwelling place, a locus of imagination. Savage Mind was destroyed last year due to the flooding. I was here. We were receiving the news it was wiped out. But now we continue to operate because we believe that bookshops, despite being built on paper, are one of the most enduring inventions of humanity. We rebuilt Savage Mind and I expanded it. We expanded it and will continue to do so despite the economic and emotional setbacks that we have to endure. Savage Mind, which is just one of the few third spaces that have been established in recent years, so the spirit of transformative conversation that would usually take place in this kind of environment of a bookshop or an art space must be sustained. I draw insight and inspiration from Solidaridad, dubbed as the biggest little bookstore in Asia, established in the 60s, which is in Manila. And today we have spaces like Mount Cloud in Baguio, Everything is Fine in Makati, Poon in La Union, Lost Bookshop in Cebu, Libraria in Dumaguete, to mention a few, are places that one must consider in imagining this Filipino spirit and imagination that I am trying to lay out today. I'd like to draw your attention to this artwork. It's another apocryphal story about Jose Rizal and his mother and the moth, the gamu-gamo. That little insect whose complex structures and the beautiful transparent or translucent wings I believe, is invoked by this structure. Architect Ruiz said it's more like of a kite. But I see this as like a kulisap, a gamu-gamo, or a wing. And we know the story. In the story, we see a mother teaching her son to read. But the son's attention is drawn to the gamu-gamo, to the moth, flying towards the light. This could be a good moment for the mother to teach attention, no? To teach discipline, the right discipline to her son. But instead of telling him to focus on the book and she will continue reading, the mother takes it as an opportunity to continue teaching, and this time with the moth itself, with the gamu-gamo itself. We know the story. That little insect will die. It burns because it got attracted to the light. But what I find interesting in this story is how the book is not closed. That book is not closed because rather it was seen as a kind of extension of a lived experience. The book is a lived experience. That there is life, that there is spirit or lesson outside the book. That in writing the true Filipino spirit, if we want that true Filipino spirit comes alive, it comes alive in listening and in reading. Thank you, Leloy. How's my time?
Oh, perfect. I love it when there's a lot of time for an open forum. So what we're going to do now is we're going to open it up, and it's great turnout. So hopefully you have a chance to converse with our authors here. So anyone taking questions now? Okay, so I'm going to get the ball rolling. And first, Dr. Alunan, when you opened, you said you don't like the word periphery. And it reminded me of a quote from national artist Rizal Mojares when he said that the problem with a lot of regional literature is that we approach it like we're approaching a trade fair. Right? The kind of trade fair model where we go to one region, we buy something from that region, we go to the other region, we buy something from the other. But they're not conversing, and it becomes a matter of sampling. Right? And then in that process, you are peripheralizing the regions. So I guess my question is, if we don't like this kind of trade fair model, which creates a kind of peripheralization, what is our alternative? And I might ask both panelists.
This model of peripheralizing, I think, stems from our national language policy, where we put two languages as the primate primal languages, the primary languages, and all the other languages are considered as secondary languages. So it roots from there. It's very, very organic. It's built into our system that if that people who speak and work in English and Filipino are considered national, and everyone else in the country that uses any other language is considered secondary. So what goes into our textbooks are works in English and works in Filipino. And until recently, there has never been, there is no mention at all that there is literature in Cebuano, there is literature in Hiligaynon, in all the other languages. And I think we have not fully appreciated the fact that we do have literature in the oral form. And the oral form is really used by the people. It's in their lips, it's in their throat, it's in their heart. They sing with it, they dance to it. It's part of their lives. And we have not looked on that and appreciated it properly as part of our literature. And because of that, the youth grow up with a feeling that Philippine literature, or literature in general, is not even in their language, that they are not participative, they are not part of that whole body of human endeavor called literature. Para lang sa, it's just for dancing, it's just for entertainment, it's for the home, it's for the family. It has nothing to do with our public life or our public identity. But it is, I tell you, part of our identity. Because when we are in these foreign shores and you hear, "Dandan su'y bayaan ta ikaw," there's such a pull in the heart. So that is really part of who we are. But we have been denying it within our own systems. I don't know whether I should be talking about this in Germany, because I talk a lot about this in the Philippines. And I thought I shouldn't be talking about this in Germany because this is a local problem. But, well, there it is. I've mentioned it to you.
I do want to say that it's a local problem, but you can compare it to problems in other countries that have problems of quote unquote, of multilingualism and linguistic supremacy. I'm thinking here, for example, of India.
India, yes.
Right, where like the Hindi language
the
right
Delhi,
now is articulated with a kind of Hindu identity that becomes problematic and domineering. But I'm gonna hand it over to Kristian. Sorry, I shouldn't be talking.
Yeah, thank you, Leloy. I mean, the peripheralization. Uh, we have a book by Dr. Aguilar. We published it in Ateneo de Naga. It's called Peripheries, no? Yeah. And it highlights the periphery as a contentious space. But sometimes it works that you are recognized as a second class, or you can work around. But my point here is my take on that question of Leloy is, I think it's high time that we intensify our cross-regional translation. It's high time to see our communities as potential. I hate to say it, but I will say it: potential market. We have to think of this as a possible market. Like, there are 5 million Bicolanos, and we celebrate if our books printed with 1,000 copies are sold out. It's a very low percentage. So I'm saying this because as a writer, I discovered this when I started moving into publishing and book selling. So there's a lot of things to be done, and I'm looking at translation as the most potent ground where we can at least raise it to the next level outside of the trade fair mentality.
I love that. Are there any other questions? Are there questions now from the audience? Please don't be shy.
There are actually
Please go ahead.
activities going on now. in which classic Filipino writers like Tiempo and Brillantes are being translated into the local languages, like Edith Tiempo in Waray, Edith Tiempo in Cebuano.
So aside from this, we are also doing translation of European works to our local languages. So I think translation will provide us that third space I was trying to discuss with you. And come to think of it, like 2 weeks ago, we launched our first audiobook in Bicol. It's Kafka in Bicol. We did the translation of Kafka in 2016 in a printed form, and now it's an audiobook. And right now there are 5,000 subscribers, at least 5,000 subscribers of young people listening to Kafka in Bicol. And I think that moves us to that third space where we will not be trapped to this binary of nation and region and all these things, no?
Where the peripheries are melted and become part of.
Yeah, it's just one. It's just one. It's not one literary culture, but it's a kind of literary culture where there's a kind of dynamism and
Yes.
everything is there.
Yes, yes. Yeah, there seems to be much interest in the world to listen to different kinds of languages because, you know, when you transform a literary piece into another language, it really undergoes such a wonderful sea change. It becomes really different. It's the same, but it's different. It will take on the patina or the color or the mood of the target language. So translation is an entirely different form of art. It's very challenging, but it does a lot for the expansion of our view of the world, our view of language.
Okay, I'm gonna. I have a couple of prepared questions. So, Dr. Alunan, you mentioned a while ago that all of these languages are part of our identity. This is a very scholarly thing to do, but why are we concerned with identity? And why should we even aspire towards a national identity when the beauty of this kind of diversity is that it precisely can negate the idea that there's a kind of oneness. And when you negate the idea that there's a oneness, then you allow for a kind of democratization of the country.
Because a person cannot live without knowing who he is. And the way that a person, or one of the ways that a person knows himself is the way he names the world. And the way he names the world is through language. And the way that I name my world in my language may be different from the way you name your world in your own language. But if I hear you and you hear me, and we hear each other, we listen to each other, then maybe we can resonate. Or maybe we can reject each other. That's also fine. But as long as I don't do you in, we can say, I can stay apart from you. I don't like you. Maybe you
not.
don't like me. That's fine. But at least I heard you. I listened to you. I can feel you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kristian, yes, please.
That's the human way, isn't it?
Yeah, but identities, it's always complex. It's good to hold on to something, no? But there's a certain kind of openness. There's a certain kind of generosity, I would say, and that is where literature comes in. While I am Bicolano, I am also affordable. By that, I mean, you see that? The
I
kind
like
of
that.
affordance, no? The word affordance does not exist. That's why I use the word affordable. Affordability, which allows you, it's a certain kind of vulnerability that allows you to move beyond this identity that can sometimes be a baggage for
Yeah,
some people, no?
I agree with you about identity being a baggage. And I also agree with you that there should be some kind of openness, you know.
Yeah.
But you see, that openness is the willingness to listen, the willingness to understand, the willingness to feel, to sense the humanity in all of us. And our languages carry that bond, that common bond with all human beings.
Yes, ma'am. Question over there.
Yeah, it's while translating Aswang Laot by Alan into German, I had an experience with oneness or not oneness. That's why I'd like to ask a question, because like he has a lot of different inkanto, or he calls them nilalang, creatures, and I had to decide, do I translate them into German or do I leave the original word? And from a sort of anti-colonial gesture, I know I cannot, for example, translate aswang into something like witch or vampire, because that would be replicating the colonial gesture. But then for a German reading, I had the tikpalang, the muwa, the mawa, the takhui. So I couldn't leave all the words in Filipino. So and it was at once liberating to see, oh no, this is such a multitude. I cannot have one principle. I can leave some in the original, some I translate, some I like, because he uses takhui as a synonym for duende. And then, I add a German synonym, and I have 3 names, or sometimes I combine with all German words to make a new combination. So, and I felt that was liberating, and sorry for being so long, but my question would be, is that Filipino to somehow to say, I don't need one principle, I can do different ways at the same time?
Yeah.
Please.
Is that Filipino?
Which one?
Which one? That stubborn. Yeah,
Not-
the multitude. Maybe it's. I would.
Taghoy, by the way, you mentioned the word taghoy, no? Taghoy is, it means whistle. It's a verb that means whistle, or a noun that names whistle. Like when a young man whistles at a pretty girl, that's taghoy. But there is also a supernatural creature that's part of our belief system, the ancient belief system. He is an almost invisible person, but you hear him because he makes taghoy. Yeah. The taghoy might happen in your mind, no? But he is, or that is a supernatural being, taghoy. Now, do we share these beliefs? I have a collection of stories now, fiction, from different places in the south, from Leyte, Samar, Negros, from the Panay Island, and also from Mindanao. And I was amazed to discover that many of these belief systems are really part of almost the same in the different parts of the country. So the belief in deities of nature, or spirits of nature, who are very powerful and can influence the life of human beings, they are found in mountains, in the oceans. This is a shared belief. They may have different names for it, but it's shared among all the Filipinos, I think, all the way to the north, all the way to Luzon. They may have different names for it. But essentially, the belief that nature has a soul and has a spirit and has power to control, to punish, to reward proper actions by human beings, it's a Filipino belief. That's the best I can think of now.
Kristian? Maybe quickly, and then we'll have one last question. 'cause we have,
Yeah, you know it, Annette. There's a legion of us here. There are several of us here. The Filipino is a multitude, I would say so. But it's like, I'd like to quote the poet Jose Garcia Villa here. And I think we are like a burning poem being held up, being waved to the world.
that is a beautiful Garcia Villa is a great way to end this panel. So let's thank our panelists, Merlie Alunan and Kristian Cordero.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.